The mop hit the floor with a wet slap, and the laughter started again. Elena Martinez didn't need to hear it to know what was happening. She'd learned to read cruelty in the curve of a smirk, in the exaggerated movements of mouths forming words meant to wound. The three executives standing by the break room were at it again, their expensive suits and leather briefcases a stark contrast to her simple gray uniform and cleaning cart. She kept her eyes down and continued mopping, her movements steady and practiced. This was Meridian Financial Group, one of Boston's most prestigious investment firms, and she'd been cleaning their offices for 2 years now. 2 years of invisible labor, of being looked through rather than at, of existing in the spaces between their important lives. The youngest executive, a man named Derek, whose corner office she cleaned every Tuesday, stepped directly into her path. He said something to his colleagues, gesturing at her, and they laughed harder. Elena could see him forming words slowly, mockingly, his face contorted in an exaggerated pantomime. She didn't need to read to understand the message. She was being made into entertainment. But what they didn't know, what none of them could possibly know, was that beneath the janitor's uniform beat the heart of someone who had spent the last 6 years doing something extraordinary. Something that would change everything. Elena had been deaf since birth. A gift her mother always called it, though the world had never treated it that way. Growing up in a small town in New Mexico, she'd been the girl people spoke about in hushed tones, the one they assumed would never amount to much. Her father had left when she was 3, unable to handle the reality of raising a deaf daughter. Her mother, Rosa, had worked 3 jobs to give Elena everything she needed, including a fierce belief that limitations were just invitations to prove people wrong. At 18, Elena had come to Boston with a full scholarship to a community college and a dream bigger than anyone expected. She'd worked her way through undergraduate studies in linguistics, sleeping 4 hours a night, living in a tiny apartment she shared with 3 other students. When she applied to graduate schools, the rejection letters piled up. Too risky, they said. Communication barriers, they claimed. We're not equipped, they explained. But Harvard had said yes, not to a master's program, but to something more ambitious, a doctoral program in cognitive linguistics with a focus on sign language acquisition and neural processing. Professor Catherine Webb had seen something in Elena's research proposal that others had missed. A brilliant mind asking questions no one else was asking about how deaf individuals process multiple sign languages and how that multilingual capacity compared to spoken language polyglots. The catch was that Harvard didn't pay enough for Elena to live on. The stipend covered tuition and a small living allowance, but Boston was expensive and Elena needed more. So she'd found the night shift at Meridian Financial, cleaning offices from 10 at night until 6 in the morning, then heading to Harvard for seminars, research, and the endless work of doctoral studies. For 6 years, she'd lived in 2 worlds that never touched. At Harvard, she was Elena Martinez, doctoral candidate, researcher, teaching assistant. At Meridian, she was the deaf janitor who didn't deserve a second glance. The morning Derek blocked her path was the morning after she'd successfully defended her dissertation. She'd stood before a panel of the most distinguished linguists in the country and signed and spoke her way through 200 pages of revolutionary research on how deaf polyglots process spatial grammar across different sign languages. She'd answered every question, challenged every assumption, and earned not just approval but admiration. She had done it. Dr. Elena Martinez, PhD from Harvard University. But Derek didn't know that as he made a crude gesture and his friends exploded with laughter. He didn't know that the woman he was mocking had just proven that deaf individuals who learn multiple sign languages develop unique neural pathways that enhance cognitive flexibility beyond what most hearing people ever achieve. He didn't know that her research was already being called groundbreaking, that journals were fighting to publish it, that she'd been offered 3 different postdoctoral positions. Elena finished mopping the section of floor and moved her cart past them, her face calm. She'd learned long ago that dignity wasn't about responding to every insult. It was about knowing your own worth when others couldn't see it. But Victor Chen saw it. Victor was Meridian's CFO, a quiet man in his 60s who always said good morning to Elena in the simple sign language he'd taught himself. His grandson was deaf, and Victor had made it his mission to learn to communicate with him. Over the 2 years Elena had worked there, they developed a respectful friendship conducted entirely in signs during the early morning hours when she finished her shift and he arrived to start his day. That morning, Victor arrived early and witnessed the scene in the break room. His face darkened as he watched Derek's performance. He signed to Elena asking if she was all right, and she signed back that she was fine. that it happened sometimes, that it didn't matter. But Victor's expression said it mattered very much to him. Later that day, as Elena was preparing to leave after her shift, Victor approached her with an unusual request. Meridian was hosting a major client event the following week, a presentation on cognitive performance and decision-making in high-pressure financial environments. Their scheduled speaker had canceled, and Victor wanted to know if Elena might know anyone from Harvard's cognitive science department who could step in. Elena's hands moved slowly as she signed her response. She told him she might know someone. She told him she defended her dissertation yesterday. She told him what her research was about. Victor's eyes widened. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled out his phone and spent the next hour reading about her research, asking questions, growing more animated with each answer. Finally, he made a proposal. Would she be willing to speak at the event? Would she share her research with Meridian's top clients and executives? Elena hesitated. This wasn't her world. These weren't her people. But Victor's face held something she recognized. The same belief her mother had always shown her. The belief that she belonged anywhere she wanted to be. She signed yes. The following Wednesday evening, Meridian's largest conference room was packed. 50 of Boston's most powerful financial executives filled the seats, including Derek and his colleagues from the break room. They were expecting a typical corporate presentation, something dry about optimization and efficiency. What they got was Elena. She stood at the front of the room in a simple black dress, her hair pulled back, a Harvard lanyard around her neck with her new university ID identifying her as Dr. Elena Martinez, Research Fellow. Behind her, screens displayed her presentation slides. Beside her stood an ASL interpreter, though Elena's slides were so visual and her presence so commanding that the interpreter became almost unnecessary. For 45 minutes, she took them on a journey through the landscape of human cognition. She explained how deaf individuals who master multiple sign languages don't just learn new vocabularies. They learn to think spatially in different grammatical dimensions. She showed brain scans demonstrating enhanced executive function, faster pattern recognition, and superior multitasking abilities. She connected her findings to decision-making under pressure, to the very skills these financial executives prided themselves on. But more than the science, she gave them something else. She told them stories. She told them about being underestimated her entire life. She told them about her mother who cleaned houses to pay for her education. She told them about working night shifts while pursuing one of the most demanding doctoral programs in the country. She told them about the gift of seeing the world differently, of understanding that limitations are often just failures of imagination. The room was absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop, except of course Elena couldn't have heard that, which somehow made the silence even more powerful. When she finished, the applause started, not polite corporate clapping, but real applause. People rising to their feet. Victor was beaming. Other executives were standing in line to speak with her, to get her card, to ask about consulting opportunities. And Derek sat frozen in his seat, his face drained of color, understanding flooding his features as he recognized her. The woman he'd mocked, the janitor he'd dismissed, the brilliant mind he'd never bothered to see. Elena noticed him, met his eyes across the room. She could have looked away, could have pretended not to remember. Instead, she signed something simple and clear enough that even without an interpreter, anyone could understand the graceful, deliberate movements of her hands. She signed the word for C. Then she turned back to the people who wanted to learn from her, who recognized that worth isn't measured by the work you do but by the dignity you bring to it, and that the most extraordinary people are often the ones we walk past every day without noticing. 3 months later, Elena received a formal apology letter from Derek. It came with a substantial donation to a scholarship fund for deaf students pursuing graduate studies. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. People can change when they finally learn to see. Elena kept cleaning offices for another month, not because she needed to, but because she'd made a commitment and she honored her commitments. But she did it now wearing her Harvard sweatshirt, and she noticed how differently people treated her when they knew who she was. It made her sad, because she was the same person she'd always been. The only thing that changed was their perception. The last night of her janitorial work, Victor brought champagne, and they toasted her new position as an assistant professor at Boston University. They signed back and forth about his grandson, about the future, about the power of believing in people, even when the world tells you not to. When Elena finally walked out of Meridian Financial Group for the last time, she left behind more than a job. She left behind proof that the person pushing the mop-up might be pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. that the quiet person you dismiss might be carrying dreams bigger than you can imagine. That kindness costs nothing, but cruelty might cost you the chance to learn from someone extraordinary. Her story reminds us that everyone we meet is fighting battles we know nothing about, carrying dreams we can't see, holding worth we might never recognize if we judge only by appearances. The janitor might be a doctor. The quiet colleague might be a genius. The person you overlook might be exactly the person you need. So look again. See deeper. Treat everyone with the respect they deserve, not because of what they can do for you, but because recognition and kindness are the most human things we can offer each other. And if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you to see people differently, then share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Pure Kindness Stories for more reminders that the world is full of extraordinary people hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to really see them. Hit that like button if you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, no matter what work they do or what challenges they face. Because the truth is simple, we rise by lifting others, and we see best when we look with kindness. Elena taught the world that being deaf didn't make her less. It made her different, and different is exactly what the world needs more of.